Hello and welcome to Expats on Air. Today we have a guy named Lawrence Feldman on the show. And he's a very interesting guest because he's written a book on mastering the Chinese language. Now, he's not a Chinese guy. His name's Lawrence Feldman. And he learned Chinese. Well, we're going to find out because I don't know exactly how good your Chinese is. I assume it's extremely good because you have a book called Mastering Mandarin that came out in 2020, fairly recently. So, Lawrence, could you introduce yourself a bit more?
Yeah, sure. And I gotta say, I love that intro music. It's awesome. Just grooving to it. So my name's
Oh, wait.
Lawrence.
Well, let me just plug that for a second. 'Cause that's made by a guy who lives in Shanghai. Actually, he's an American guy.
Oh yeah.
Artist is named Cruel Buddhist, but he's a dude named Henry who I knew before he started making that kind of music. So, good guy. Yeah, he still lives in Shanghai. And I just totally derailed your intro, but you should
No
get into
worries.
that. You should get into that right now.
Awesome. Okay, so my name's Lawrence Feldman. I am from America, and I've been living in China for about the last 5 years, like 5.5 years. Um, I spent most of my time in Chengdu. It's a wonderful city, and right now I'm actually working in Shandong province, right next to Jinan, city in Shandong. And I've been here for a few months. While living in China, I've done, a bunch of different things. Of course, like most foreigners, I've done the teaching route. I actually opened up my own training center, had that running for over a year. I've worked in the crypto sphere. I've done a lot in education and just had a lot of interesting experiences here and just love being an expat.
Awesome. And you have this story that I've heard a number of times. I mean, if I want to get really general with your background, American guy or Western guy who comes over, teaches English, starts becoming a little more entrepreneurial with the English teaching, creates your own, you create your own business, and you're not in a first tier city. You're in one of like the second tier cities or somewhere where there's maybe fewer foreigners. A lot more opportunities.
Well, actually, Chengdu has like risen up in the ranks. When I first got here 5 years ago, it was a tier two city, and now it's actually technically a tier one city. It's changed dramatically since I've been here. It's incredible. So, I mean, it's still not a Shanghai or a Beijing or a Shenzhen, but yeah, it's getting there. But yeah,
Yeah,
like you said,
well,
entrepreneurialism is really big for a lot of expats.
yeah. There's a ton of guys who did that in Shanghai and Beijing as well. Just that's a great opportunity in China if you like really go after it. Like if you're teaching, I used to teach like 2008 to 2012, and the pay was really low because it was a public university. The hours were very low, so it was very easy, relaxing, you could say. But you weren't making a lot of money. But if you really wanted to, you could really create something for yourself.
Totally. Yeah, you could really hustle. I mean, part of being expat in China is like it is what you make of it, right? If you want to just chill out, relax, and just have beers and just, or sake in your case, and just like chill out, right? You could do that here. You could live a very relaxing lifestyle. If you want to hustle and you want to open up businesses and you want to take your career to the next level, you can do that too. So it's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the China dream, the China expat dream. And do you think it's still that way now compared to how it was when you first went over?
Yeah. So like when I came here, like I think 5.5 years ago, it was kind of the ending of the last phase. At least when I talked to like the OGs who have been here for like 10, 15 years, they were saying like China was like the wild, wild west just a few years prior. And it was kind of ending that stage and moving to a new stage. Um, I still think it's totally a place where you can make it into something wonderful, make it whatever you want it to be. It's a bit different than it used to be for sure, but the opportunities are really, I don't want to say endless, but the opportunities are plentiful for sure.
Yeah, I don't want to say anything that's gonna get you in trouble because you're obviously working in China. You have a pretty big stake over there, right? You have a family member, like you're married.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
married to a wonderful Chinese lady, and she was born in Sichuan, and she lived most of her life in Xinjiang, and then she came back to Sichuan, came back to Chengdu actually, and I met her here. Yeah, so I have a little family, and it's great.
Cool. And for your sake,
Yeah,
I'm gonna avoid any topics that might cause you inconveniences, as they might say. I'm not
thank
like
you.
a, I'm not like against talking about these things at all. I like talking about these things, but the reality is you're living over there. You have, a marriage. So yeah, it's pretty serious. You got to be realistic with what's going on. So
Yeah,
we won't talk about that, but let's talk about Chengdu because Chengdu is a pretty
sure.
special city to me. I spent about 3 months there, like 2 3 months in 2006. So I was in college. I was finishing my second year of college and going into summer, and I did this program on a it was called USAC, and I don't remember what that stands for, but it was like a program for if you were a university student in America, you could be in this program. So it was American college kids from all over going to Chengdu and staying in these like nice apartment suites, and then going to Xinan Minzu Daxue, which is the Southwest University for Nationalities, which is kind of a mouthful. You're familiar with that school?
I've heard of it, not too familiar with it though. Yeah.
Yeah, so this was 2006, and we spent the summer there. And so I'm married to a woman who I met during that program now. So my
So you
girlfriend
met
at
her
the
in
time.
Chengdu?
Yeah, we met in Chengdu. So she's also
Cool.
American. She was going to school in Texas. I was going to school in Massachusetts, and we met in Chengdu. So we're married now, and we live in Texas now. So that's my story with Chengdu. So I was there just for the summer
Nice.
in 2006. I think the last time I went to visit was only a year after that, 2007. So I haven't been to Chengdu in so long.
It's
Can you
changed
tell
so
me?
much.
Yeah, can you? What were the years you were there? What were the things that you saw that changed? Tell us all about that.
Yeah, so when I got there, it was like 2005, I believe. So like a year before you were there. Um, it was still, you know, it was nothing like it was now. I mean, but there was so much like infrastructure. I just remember like there was constant building every single day, building new roads, building new rail lines. Um, it's like nonstop infrastructure week every single week. And just the economy just was moving drastically. I would say in the 5 years and change that I've been here, I've never seen a country move so much, advance so much as I have here compared to the previous country I was in, obviously America. Um, 20 something years. I've never seen anything like it. And they did it so quickly. So I would say the infrastructure and the economy, huge difference, huge advancement just in a few years.
And how about the food? Because Chengdu is
Oh,
famous for the spicy food. Obviously, they got a lot of good hot pot there. What's
oh
has
yeah.
anything changed food wise since you've been there?
Um, Anything changed? I would say pork prices have gone up a little bit. I mean, it's still ridiculously cheap. The food is amazing. I like to say when I describe Chengdu, I say spicy food, spicy women. The food is incredible. It's one of my favorite parts about Chengdu, is the Chengdu cuisine or Sichuan cuisine. I wouldn't say it's changed in the last 5 years. I would just say maybe slightly more expensive and maybe a little bit more open to other types of food from different provinces and like Western food, more expat food coming in. Um, Maybe a little bit more cleaner than it used to be, with the food quality improving. Food prices up a little bit, but still incredibly cheap. And that's another reason I love, Chengdu lifestyle is you can have great, amazing, food for nothing, just for a few dollars a day. And that hasn't changed. Maybe now it's a few dollars and a few cents. That's all.
Just from the pork prices. Now, you said
Yeah.
the magic Chengdu word there. You said spicy women or something like that. Now, there's a
Yeah.
Chinese word, la meizi. It's like
Hmm.
spicy girl, something like that. Now, what is that? What is that all about? What is a spicy girl?
Spicy girl. I mean, just like, I guess it would be like a hot girl, That made it like a hot, like a hot girl. Chengdu and Sichuan in general have some of the most beautiful Chinese women. And that's just not my own opinion. That's not like, my subjective opinion. That's like a lot of Chinese people will say, oh, Sichuan girls, Chongqing girls are some of the most beautiful women. So
Are you
just
saying
real,
it's a scientific fact?
I don't know. I mean, it's just like its beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Everybody has their different standard for beauty, but I mean, in a lot of Chinese people's eyes, they would say, Sichuan girls are gorgeous. In my own personal opinion, I think so as well. They're really like slender, and like small, petite, take good care of themselves. It's just, I think they're gorgeous,
Now,
cute.
spicy. Now, this word, just going back to I don't know, is etymology? Maybe this isn't the right word. It doesn't matter. But back to this word,
Mhm.
spicy. In English, like if something's hot, something's spicy, these are similar terms. There's a lot of crossover. Now, does a spicy girl have like a hot temper? Is there any personality trait that's connected to this word in Chinese? This Chinese word. Now, we're talking about this Chinese term, la meizi, just to be
Right.
clear. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like la just like spicy, but like here it just means like hot, sexy, like that. I don't think it has to do with their personality, like the word itself. However, I would say Sichuan girls, they do have a certain personality. They might, I don't know, they're really small and cute and everything, but if they get angry, they can cause a scene. Um, I mean, yeah, they have their own unique personality. I don't think it has to do with the word, not made to like it's just like, like a like a sexy chick like that, right?
Okay. So it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
All right, and that brings us to you're talking about Mandarin here, and we have your book up here, Mastering Mandarin. Tell us
Mm.
about this book. Like, what is this about for one? I mean, other than what the title suggests, but tell us about like what was the inspiration for it? When did you decide to write it? Kind of the whole story.
Sure, sure. So, okay, so when I came to China back in 2015, I had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself into. I just, I don't know, ignorantly assumed that like I would kind of pick up the language by osmosis, kind of like, we learn like Spanish or French in high school, and we just kind of assume, if we went to like Mexico or something or France, we could kind of figure it out, just learn it by living there, I had that same impression, like, I'd be fine, I'd figure it out. And I realized how wrong I was and how helpless I was. I felt, like an infant. I want to say I felt like a toddler, but not even because toddlers were, they could do more than me. I mean, I'm talking, I couldn't even turn on, the air conditioning and change the settings for hot or cold. Couldn't do the laundry without calling up, someone to treat one of my training center colleagues at the time, asking them for help with the most basic of tasks. And like, to be honest, like a 4-year old could have helped me make my life more easy. So I was like an infant. And the reason why I wrote this book is because knowing no Chinese from the get-go and realizing just how difficult it was to survive at a place like Chengdu, because it's not like, like a Beijing or something where there's a lot of people speaking English around you. No one's speaking English here. Um, Unless you like work at like a training center at a school, you'll have like English teachers. Other than that, you're not going to have people speaking English to you. I mean, unless you're at like the Ritz-Carlton hotel or something, you know, they'll speak English. Um, and I realized just how difficult it is as a foreigner with no Chinese background to come to China and try to just live. Not, So I started taking Chinese seriously my, I don't know, second year in China, and I started picking up on these tricks, and I just scoured all the forums, I bought a bunch of books, books for like the first, survival phrases. And then I moved into pinyin and then just trying to find a bunch of hacks and stuff because I couldn't figure out. I just wanted someone to sit me down and be like, okay, Lawrence, this is what you need to do. Here's the roadmap. Here's your blueprint. Do this, this, and this, then do this and then this. But there was none of that. They were just like, oh, if you want to learn some phrases, you can learn these. If you want to learn pinyin, you can go here. So I found it really frustrating that there was no comprehensive manual for how to acclimate to this totally foreign language. And I wasn't picking it up my first year just by osmosis like I thought I was. I was still like in a toddler mode at best. And as I got better, my expat friends would like reach out to me and be like, hey, like I heard like your Chinese is getting like really good. Do you have some tips for me? And I kept trying to help them because like I wish someone like, would have helped me. And there were a few people that helped me for sure. A lot of my Chinese friends helped me tremendously by teaching me, but there wasn't a lot of help coming from the expats. So the more I started to help my expat friends, I started to realize, you know what, I have like a lot of knowledge on this topic of how to study, like study methods, tips and tricks and whatnot for learning a language that's totally foreign to the language, your mother tongue. And I just said, you know what, I have this store of information. It's like sitting in my brain and I want to kind of just put paper to pen or just, type it out rather. And finally, one night, it was like 1 a.m. and I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to start banging out an outline. So I got up out of bed. I was like half asleep, lit a candle, and I just started writing for hours. Like it was cathartic to get all of these strategies and stuff that I've learned and just to put it somewhere. It was a really cathartic experience. And I knew that I could help so many people by getting a book out there. So
Yeah, as somebody who's studied Chinese, I could say that's very interesting, because there are these strategies you need to take. And I find, a lot of foreigners that I would talk to who are new to China, maybe I'd been there a few years, I'd already been studying the language for many years, and they had no knowledge of this country, and they couldn't speak Chinese. And they're saying, well, maybe I'll just learn how to say words. I'm not going to worry about the characters. I'm not going to worry about the Chinese writing system at all. I'm just going to speak. Now, that's something I always advise them against, strongly against that. You got to learn the characters.
yes.
You got to learn everything kind of 360, It's like a omni-channel marketing campaign. You got to hit all the touch points, you got to hit every little spot. So can you talk about that? Like, what are some of those strategies? What are some of the do's and don'ts that are kind of maybe on the more elementary level, for people who are maybe new to Chinese, something that they could benefit from?
Totally. Just picking back on what you were just saying, you need to attack it from every single angle. It's not good. It's not enough just to be able to speak. You also have to know how to listen, and you also have to know how to read and to write. It's like you have to attack it from every single aspect, like you were just saying. And there's a lot of expats living in China. They've been living here. Like I'm sure you have plenty of friends like this or know people like this. They've been living here for like 10 or more years. They're still struggling to get by with their beginner Chinese. Some have gotten like a step above beginner, beginner intermediate. And then they kind of get stuck in a place of like complacency. They just feel like, oh, I don't have the time to do this. It's too difficult. I have other things to do. And if you ever bring up like Chinese language or some cultural stuff, they get like really sensitive. Like if you ever bring up something about the Chinese language, they get, really sensitive. It's a touchy subject, and a lot of expat groups are like, no Chinese, don't speak any Chinese in here, only speak English. And it's strange. And I just hope that there are more expats that come to China with a desire to learn the language, learn the culture. I mean, think about it this way. If you're, we're both American, right? And if there's a Chinese person that wants to come live abroad in America for a few years and they refuse to speak English, wouldn't you say like, what are you doing? You're in this country. You have to learn the language of the country. You have to learn English, right? So,
Well,
I
in
mean,
America now, we're very divided on this. One half of
oh,
the country might be like, learn English. The other half might be like, do whatever you want, and I'm not going to worry about the country being fragmented into,
Right.
like really balkanized or something. Not saying that would happen if, just the study abroad student wants to just hang out with Chinese people and speak Chinese. That's pretty normal, right?
True, but they're not really getting the full experience. So you do have like a lot of Chinese students that are coming abroad, going abroad rather to America, and they just speak very broken English. They don't really have a desire for learning more than they already know, and they kind of just want to get their degree and go back. And I just think that's not the best way to go about things, in my personal opinion. You come to a country, you're a guest, and you should, just do as the Romans do and learn their culture, learn their language. It's a sign of respect. It's curiosity. I just
Yeah,
think it's the
and
right way of doing things.
I mean,
And
if you
a
want to
lot
get
of,
into
yeah,
more selfish terms too, I mean, what you're saying is like show some respect, learn something. These are all very high-minded things. What about the really guttural, basic things? Your life's gonna be better if you're living in China and you speak Chinese. If you don't speak
totally.
Chinese, you're living. I don't want to say anything controversial, but it's like having a disability. Like
Yeah,
you're really impaired from living when you're over there and you don't speak the language. So just do yourself a favor and learn Chinese if you're gonna be over there.
totally. Yeah, it's not even just about like a sign of respect and all this. Like you said, like if you can't communicate at least at like an intermediate level in reading, typing at least, listening and speaking, you're going to have so much difficulty living here that you're going to feel like a toddler, and you're an adult, and it's just really frustrating. It'll make your experience hellish. How are you going to, what happens when the water goes out? Like there's no water left and the electricity's done. You have to call mommy for help. I mean, mommy's not going to help you, she's not here. So you have to call like who, your boss or whatever. It's not good you know
Yeah, and I think the guys I know that are really stubborn about this, who just really have no interest in learning Chinese, but there's no sight in the near future of them leaving China ever. But they don't care to learn Chinese, but they're pretty proud of it. They're like, yeah, whatever, man. I got people that help me. I got a few girls that help me out. You know, There's
Yeah,
always those
yeah. My girl,
guys.
my girl translates for me. I don't have to worry about that. I mean, look, I would say that there are a few rare examples where I'm not going to hate on somebody for not speaking Chinese or being somewhat, relatively fluent in it. And those people are, maybe you have like some really high level executives that had no plans to come to China, and their company had them come over here against their will. It kind of like, you have to go to China for a year and then you can come back. They have literally zero time. They're putting in like 90-hour work weeks and stuff like that. Um, or maybe a situation where it's like you have a family member coming over, and maybe you're older, like you're in your 60s or something like that. Eh, I can make a few exceptions, but I would say for the vast majority of expats that do come here, you got to learn the damn language. You have to learn the damn language. I mean, it's just like, learn the culture, learn the language. It'll make your life so much easier in so many ways. And it's a shame that there aren't more people um, that aren't trying to immerse themselves in this wonderful culture and language. One of the great things about living in China is how excited Chinese natives are to teach you their language and their culture. They will literally bend over backwards and teach you for free. They're excited to. They're proud of their culture. How many Americans do you know will go to like a Chinese a student that's studying abroad, a year in college or whatever, and will just willingly teach them for free? It's never going to happen. It's rare.
I think that might only happen to the Japanese students, and the only people going to them are like the weeb guys, like
Okay,
the
yeah,
people super obsessed with anime, and then they might
yeah,
just
yeah,
get creeped out. I think that might be the only case in America where that
yeah.
happens. But
But
yeah,
it's
for
rare,
China,
right?
yeah, yeah, and I'm just making a joke there. I mean, I'm not being serious about that,
Yeah,
but yeah, I know what you're saying for sure. Like people in China, they want to learn English and they want to have a friend from a foreign country because it's interesting and they don't have that opportunity often. So it's interesting for them to have that kind of relationship and they're happy to help. But it's a two-way street
yeah,
too. There's definitely an exchange going
exactly.
on in these kind of
Yeah,
relationships.
And when you come here, like, so if you come from like America and you come to China, you're kind of already given like a higher level of status. And what do some people do with that? It's like some expats will come here and be like, oh, I'm an American. So like when they go and order food, they just speak English and they're like, oh, you don't know English? I thought this was an international city or something like that. And they just like scoff at the waiter or waitress. And because they're like, oh, I'm an American, not to like be rude, but I just think that this way of thinking is just so wrong.
Well, that's just sounds kind of
Yeah,
dumb because it's like you're in China, man. Like, come on, like this is not an English speaking country. Don't expect people to speak English. If people speak English,
yeah,
you're lucky. That's how you should.
right,
That's how you should treat it. And that's why it's
totally.
good to know Chinese. Now, I want to segue a little bit. Maybe I did this too early, but I pulled up this thing that I saw at least on the internet. I think it was last week, and it's an open letter to white expat men that I have met while living in China. Have you seen this before?
Honestly, yes, I saw you write this in one of the groups we're in together, and I had a
Yes.
look at it. It's hilarious.
Yeah. So yeah, you're one of those people that I've seen in WeChat groups for years, I think, and I've never actually had a voice to voice conversation. It's only been text if there's been any interaction, and it's been in a group setting, and maybe it's not so direct. Um, but it's kind of cool to meet. This happens. I meet a lot of WeChat people, as I like to call them. In not even in real life, but something that's more real, something that's a little more substantial. And yeah, I did share this in a few groups. And which one did you see it in?
I think it was the American Bros.
Okay, American Bros in China.
Yeah.
Okay, so an open
So
letter. So I don't need to read this on air, although I'm very tempted to because it's just kind of funny, but it is a little long. But it's basically, I guess she's a Chinese American who is tired of white guys like kind of showing off that their Chinese is better than hers. I think the,
yeah,
that's the kind of basic problem she has. I think there are deeper seated issues here in this article because she's very spiteful. So point one, your Mandarin might be better than mine, blah, 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 blah. Perhaps you're right. I'm just jealous of you. I still can't help but feel that there's a few points that I should clarify. First, my weakness in Mandarin is because I'm a shitty language learner in general. Classic, oldest trick in
there
the
is no
book.
such thing as a shitty language learner. Everybody is
Oldest,
born with language.
that's the oldest trick in the book for people who just don't want to learn a language, I think, or
Yep.
just like
Yep.
don't want to commit or something. Because I know a lot of people who say that, and they didn't have a problem with English.
Right. I thought I was that way too, actually. So, like, I wrote in my book how I took Latin. I took Latin and Spanish in middle school and high school, and I'm terrible at it. I got like C's in those classes, and I was one of those people that was like, "Oh, I'm not like gifted in that area. I'm not good at
Yeah,
foreign languages," and I was wrong. It's the kind of thing where if you put the work in, you know, you could do it. You just got to put the work in. And it
yeah,
might come easier to some than to others, for sure. But it's all about putting in that work.
yeah.
Everybody is
Well,
born, with the ability to learn language.
yeah, and for me, I mean, I can really give you an example of that because I really wanted to learn Chinese because I really wanted to move to China after college and work, and I was really excited about doing that. So I felt like I was invested in learning Chinese. It was like a life plan. So I was learning it in college, so I felt very motivated. And if I was just taking Spanish as a requirement, I'm not going to put the same energy into it or effort or interest. So there is a big difference there.
Totally.
So if you're just going with your French class from high school and how you were so bad at it, maybe you just weren't invested in it, and maybe for the best, maybe you shouldn't have been invested in it. But this person is, I guess they feel very proud of their Chinese heritage. The thing is, they're Cantonese American. They say that right here. So
Hmm.
I don't think anybody should be expecting a Cantonese American to speak Mandarin. That's just not the language that they speak. They speak
Yeah.
Cantonese. And they left China a long
Cantonese.
time ago. Like most of them did, at least. I mean, there's some who came
Yeah.
over maybe in the 90s or even later, but a lot of the Cantonese in America came over decades ago, if not like
Right.
centuries, but if not in the 1800s.
I don't know about centuries, but yeah, they came out, a while ago, maybe some, but yeah, Cantonese is a beautiful language, and I say language and not dialect, because like I'm learning some Cantonese now myself actually, it is a beautiful language it has some similar aspects to Mandarin, but it also is quite different. And I just think it sounds really, really interesting. But yeah, no, she's third generation Cantonese American. I would not expect her to know Cantonese or Mandarin because she's third generation. But I guess with a lot of ABCs, they might have like this identity crisis. I don't know because I'm not one of them, so I can't speak on this knowledgeably. But I would guess maybe people kind of assume that because they look so different, that they must know, you know, Chinese language, Chinese culture, and it must be frustrating for some of them. So I could kind of see where she's coming from.
Yeah, I think point one is just silly, and I think it's just I'm not saying this dumb bitch or anything like that. I'm just saying like, maybe she needs to look at languages a bit differently and kind of have a different perspective of that. Second point, I think is very fair. And if there's any guy who's making fun of you for not speaking Chinese and you're a Cantonese American, well, you should make fun of him for not knowing better. The joke's on this person, and you should turn it around maybe. But it gets interesting here. Thirdly. Fuck you. Fuck you. I'm sorry. That might have been a little rude, but I don't want to hurt your feelings, so please let me backtrack. Yeah, okay, you just took the time to write that, and an editor went over this line, and yeah, it's very natural. Yes, Mandarin is notoriously difficult, and yes, it's impressive that you've studied this hard. That said, students are nothing without their teachers, and much of your fluency should be credited to the unsettling number of Chinese women you dated. So she goes on and on about like white guys dating Chinese women and getting free language lessons. The thing is that that's true for a ton of guys, and I would even suggest that you had a lot of benefit from that, having a Chinese spouse. But I didn't. I didn't have Chinese girlfriends. So I had an American girlfriend and then wife in China. So I never had that benefit, but I still learned Chinese. So she this article doesn't speak to me. I mean, I think it's kind of funny. I think she's probably mad at an individual and felt inspired to write this article. And the third point makes me think that she was attracted to this individual, and she just feels emotional and decided to write this piece. And that's where this line, thirdly, fuck you, came from. That's my analysis.
Yeah, I don't know who the author of this piece is, so I can't really speak on that. Obviously, this person is upset, and I want to validate their feelings and empathize with this author, and I can understand how it must be frustrating to have some white guy go up, like she was writing down later on in the article, having some white dude explain like the four tones in Mandarin to her, which she already knows, and it's kind of like insulting. I could see that. But it seems like she might have an axe to grind with somebody in particular or a few guys. But she does point out like learning Chinese is notoriously difficult, and it is impressive to study to a degree to become fluent in it. That's for sure. The part about, dating Chinese women, you're not going to get like a high level of Chinese just by having like random Chinese girlfriends, because they're probably going to be speaking to you in English. They're not your teachers, right? They're not going to break down, complex, vocabulary and grammar with you. It's going to be quite simple, the conversation.
Yeah, and I would
Yeah.
say most of the guys I knew who had Chinese girlfriends, they didn't speak Chinese well, and they relied on their girlfriends.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a lot of that. Relying, there are plenty of expats who rely on their girlfriends or even wives to be their translator. It's unfortunate, and I hope that I can change some of that and get through to some people who are in that type of situation, because it's not the way you want to spend the rest of your time here in China if you're going to be here for any serious period of time. It's not good for the relationship either. Can you imagine like having to always ask your wife like what's going on around you? Like, what's this? Where am I? What did this person say? What did this say? What's this menu say? Like, it must be really straining on their relationship. It's not good. It's not good.
Yeah, because I've been the guy at the bar with my expat friend who doesn't speak Chinese, and he's relied on me. So he's like asking me to be an interpreter so he can talk to a girl or something. I'm like, no, man, I'm not doing that. That's work. And then you're trying to have like an intimate discussion with some woman that I don't want to be a part of this, like just like get me out of this. And you know what? This article, I'm gonna pull this away. It is amusing. Kristen
Yeah.
Moy is the writer. If you would like to come on the show and talk about this, we'd love to hear more from your side of the story on why you are angry about guys who speak Chinese who are white. But back to mastering the language.
Mastering Mandarin.
Yeah. So, do you have any advice for like the first year of Mandarin? Like,
Yeah,
what do you got to do in that first year? Are there any targets, goals, that kind of thing?
totally, totally. So basically, when you're coming to China and you're in a new environment where everyone is speaking a total foreign language to you, what you need to do is just first realize, okay, this is going to be frustrating. And you have to be okay with it, just psychologically. Just understand that this is going to be a real challenge. And, don't beat yourself up over it. Enjoy it, embrace it, be humble. Secondly, you have to go into it with the mindset of you are like an infant. You are hearing a new language for the first time. And actually, in a lot of ways, it's more difficult than an infant because when you come to China, you're coming in an older age where your language acquisition, the parts of the brain involved with language acquisition is already, you're already past that stage of where it becomes like ridiculously easy to absorb a new language. However, you do have something that infants don't have, and that is you can control yourself better. You could focus much better. Um, so you kind of have to go into it with, okay, this is my first year. I'm going to get a lot of input. I am going to surround myself with all Chinese people, Chinese music, Chinese movies, TV shows. And it's okay if I don't know what the heck is going on around me. You just need input, 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 input nonstop. Don't worry about whether or not you can even speak at this point. You just want to get a ton of input. And I would say that is most important. It's just pure input and to stay with the locals. Do not, go spending your time with a bunch of expats because you'll get too comfortable with the expat lifestyle, and then maybe you won't have that same desire to learn the language. So make Chinese friends who could speak a little bit of English and just get tons of input. That'd be the first year, I would say.
Okay. And let's say that's not a luxury for somebody like not living in China. Let's say you're in America or in another country and you want to learn Chinese. There's not a lot of Chinese people around you except for, like Zhang's Kitchen up the street, the local Chinese joint. Other than that, there's like no Chinese people where this person lives. How do
Yeah.
they tackle Chinese at an elementary level? Like, are there any tips for, the person who could rely more on books or other resources?
Sure, sure. So yeah, that is a unique challenge. Learning a language when you're not living that language, right? Yeah, of course, there's plenty of things that you can do. You can try to, we live in a wonderful time where you can just hop online and immerse yourself into any world you want. You can go to any website that you want. You can just learn so many things for free. And what I would say to that person is to try to make their life as Chinese as possible. You're going to have to take it extremely seriously, even more serious. If you want to get, fluent, take it much more seriously than even the expat living here, because you kind of have to make everything around you in Chinese. So when you're watching your favorite sports show, watch it in Chinese, even if you don't know what is going on, what the announcers are saying. It doesn't matter. If you're playing video games, play them in Chinese, even if you don't know what's going on. You can guess, and then you'll start hearing things that you're like, oh, I heard that word before. And then maybe you can look it up, and learn what that word means. So I would say make your environment as Chinese as possible. Eat more Chinese food. Obviously, American Chinese food is not like real Chinese food at all, but just immerse yourself into a Chinese world that might be having Chinese pictures around you, on your picture frames or something. It might mean going on YouTube and checking out like Chinese American channels or whatnot. Um, so I would say immersion as much as you can make your life Chinese, make it Chinese. And then I would try and learn the basics, of course, your pinyin. And I would go on italki. a wonderful app where you can pay a teacher to have classes, and you can get a native teacher helping you out, and that's phenomenal. So I would definitely take advantage of that resource. I would get on WeChat for sure, jump into the community where you can just meet a bunch of, real Chinese people. And, it was maybe 5 years ago, it was even more exciting because there was like such few foreigners in China that like if a foreigner entered a chat room, like, oh my God, there's a foreigner here. It was so like surprising and shocking. And all of a sudden you were like, this VIP, and now it's not as much like that, but it's still like that a little bit. And if you go anywhere into a WeChat group or whatever, they will treat you so nicely and so openly. And so I would say take advantage of those resources: italki, WeChat, go to the YouTube channels where you can learn Chinese, learn your basic pinyin. Hey, when you go order food at a restaurant, maybe just try saying a few words to the waiter or waitress. And just immerse yourself in that lifestyle as best as you can.
Cool. Now, WeChat is a chat app, and there are some challenges if you're not in China to actually get on. There's some verification challenges that some people have. But despite that, if you join WeChat for the first time, you don't know any Chinese people. How do you find a group? Like, do you have any suggestions for that?
If you don't know any Chinese people, it might be hard to get verified. I would maybe say you can kind of go on to Reddit or something like that and ask if someone could verify you. You have to search in forums.
There actually is a subreddit for that. There's like a WeChat verification subreddit. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Good guess there.
get yourself on there. Maybe search the forums. I don't think you can access like Baidu in America, right?
I'm not sure. I know a lot of Chinese sites they don't work well if you're in the States.
Yeah.
And especially if they have some kind of media, like videos, they have blocks up for the copyright stuff.
Yeah, I guess the best bet would be to go on Reddit and find other people that are like expats and say, hey, I want to be an expat. I'm not. Can you help verify me and, get me into a group? And then once you're in one group, you'll find other groups and it'll just cascade until like me, you're in literally 1,000 groups and it's just taking up, 3/4 of your phone's memory. So yeah, I would go that route.
Actually, if you're listening, just hit me up and I could invite you to a bunch of groups because I'm in so many. I have I'm not in China anymore, but I kept touch with China with WeChat, just because I have so many communities there that I have my foot in the door at least.
WeChat is phenomenal. I mean, there's nothing really like it. It's just this wonderful multi-purpose app. I wrote a whole chapter about it in my book and just how valuable it is for learning the language. It is a fantastic app, and you could find groups for anything, and you could find people, all around China and now even in different countries too. So get yourself on WeChat. Download italki. Maybe your teacher can recommend someone for you. Just get yourself into it. Just get started. Just jump in. It's a journey. It's fun. It's exciting. It's new. It's exotic,
Now, if you wrote your book 12 years ago, would you have written a chapter on QQ?
I guess so. Yeah. I guess the book would be a lot different because if you think about it, 12 years ago, if you came to China, how would you even look things up? You would have to carry a dictionary, a real dictionary around with you.
People
pad and paper everywhere. That would be really tough. See, we live in a really wonderful time right now where, when I came here in 2005, my translation app wasn't working on my phone. I bought a Chinese phone when I got here, and there was no translation app at that time. I wasn't able to download one.
Did you
have
for me,
it was
an old Nokia phone or something?
I don't know. I got a really cheap Chinese phone because I was only planning to live here for 1 year, so I didn't want to get an expensive phone, and I didn't have access to the Apple store. It wasn't an Apple. It was just a cheap Chinese phone. And at that time, there was no translation app, and if there was, I couldn't find it. And I had a problem with data card. I didn't want to bother somebody to help bring me over to get the data fixed. You don't want to inconvenience your Chinese friends with all of your problems because you can't do anything and you're helpless. So anyways, for like the first, I don't know, 6 months or 9 months or something, I had no translation app. But like now it's just like, if you're coming here, you can get all that stuff installed on your phone and you're already at a huge advantage.
Yeah, and with WeChat, you literally just press a button and it translates something. Like any text you
Yeah.
get. Yeah, or a picture. If you just see a picture of something, you take a picture and then it translates it for you, just seamlessly. But I guess Google
And
has something like that too. I mean, there's a lot of
Pleco.
tools that do that. Yeah, and say again.
Pleco is phenomenal. It's one of my favorite apps. Pleco Dictionary app. It's
Okay.
one of the big time apps out there for for Chinese learning. It's a wonderful dictionary, and it has like a OCR, I believe it's called. You could like scan things, like you could scan menu items, and it'll translate it for you. You can look up etymology of words, sample sentences. It is the world's best Chinese dictionary. I've spent maybe like $300 or $400 on dictionary add-ons. Like I absolutely love it.
Damn, three four
So
hundred dollars in
on
freemium
add-ons.
purchases,
It's free.
in-app
The dictionary is
purchases.
totally free.
That is a app developer's dream right there.
I love it. It's great. It is a fantastic app.
Cool. So Pleco. What about Rosetta Stone? Because they're the ones with the big ad spend. They're everywhere. Is that any good?
I personally can't speak to that because I have never used Rosetta Stone before, so I can't say. What I have heard was I heard it was okay for beginners. It was a decent experience for them, but it wasn't like a panacea for language learning. And I mean, none of these apps on their own are a panacea. And there's no one single app that's going to just take you there. So I don't know Rosetta Stone's, how they are with Chinese. I'm sure it's pretty good, but it's not going to put you at a very, very high level. No single app can really do that, right? On its own.
Yeah. Now Chinese has a lot of special things about it that other languages might not need, like things like Chinese characters and pinyin. You know, and you mentioned when you're starting out with Chinese, you should get a lot of input. Like you should immerse
Yes.
yourself in people speaking Chinese. Now, what about pinyin though? Is that something you should learn from the get go, or should you wait till you get that input until you invest time in doing pinyin?
Okay, that's a great question. So I think first, what you should just do is get a feel of the sound of the language. Just get like the ebbs and the flow, the rhythm, how it sounds. Like dun 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 dun, like that. Just kind of feel it. Get like, okay, I understand. Like at least people identify, oh, this person's speaking Mandarin, and kind of get that feel of what Mandarin sounds like. Get that feel of it. Once you do that for a little bit, maybe like a month or two, 3 months, something like that, then I would say, yeah, jump in with the pinyin. Pinyin is wonderful. In English, we have all of these words that are pronounced different ways, even if they're even spelt the same way. And like English is a mess. It's a bastard language. It's just it's made from all different, German, Latin, Greek, all these things, French all together. Pinyin is actually really wonderful, really simple, and you can master Pinyin really quickly. So I would definitely jump in on that for sure. The combinations, I think there's only like 800 or something combinations, maybe like 1,000 and change if you include the fifth tone,
Mm-hmm.
as
Can you
opposed
explain
to
though, like
English, where it's ridiculous.
what are the tones? Because there's four main tones. Then you mentioned the fifth tone. Can you explain what they are?
Yeah, so you have 5 tones in Mandarin. It was actually 4 unique tones and 1 neutral tones. And actually, it's only 409. Sorry, 409 different sounding syllables, and 1,200 if you include the fifth neutral tone. So just the 5 tones. It's just you have the high flat tone, and then you have the second tone. It's like rising, like a question, like that. You have the third tone, It's kind of like a guttural sound. It's kind of like sloping down and up a little bit. And then you have the fourth tone, which is like sharply down, kind of like you're scolding somebody a little bit. And then the fifth tone is just like real boom, real quick, like a quick burst. So the classic example that everyone uses, and I don't know why, but I mean, I'll just use the same one. It's just ma, 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 ma. So the first one, ma, it's just a flat, high-pitched sound. Ma, it's like a question. Second tone. Third tone, ma, more like guttural. You feel it in your throat. And then ma, like the angry tone, I call it. And then the fifth tone is just ma, just short burst like that. So if you can master those tones, then you could say anything you want in Mandarin.
It is kind of an angry tone, right? Because there's like a lot of the words that have negative connotations often have that tone, right? Like ma,
Sometimes,
like to scold somebody, right?
yeah. Ma, it's like to scold, right? And I was actually looking for the parallel myself when I was writing the book, and I was like, are all fourth tone words like angry, or is there like, but it's not like that. There are some like that, and there are some that aren't. And also with fourth tone, one of the mistakes that I did make was when I learned it my like second year, I was like hitting that like ma, like very angry because my teacher taught me that, but actually I found out later that like you don't have to be so intense with that. As long as you have a downward inflection, you could do it in a more elegant way. Like, if that makes sense, like go away. Like,
Yeah, casual, like casual and
yeah,
natural kind of talk. Because when you're learning a language, you're at first you're imitating a sound, right? It's not a natural noise you're making, and then eventually it just becomes like a thing you speak. Like today at the park, I surprised a Chinese guy. I saw a Chinese guy, and I'm not just approaching any Chinese guy I see. I'm in like a quiet neighborhood park, and there's like a Chinese guy, and I never see Chinese people in this neighborhood. So he's speaking Chinese to his kids. So I started talking to him, and he's from Shandong, and that's where you're living now. So
yeah,
he's a dude from Yantai, and that's on the coast. And Shandong is famous for Qingdao, and of course
yeah.
there's the obligatory Tsingtao beer. And since we're talking about pinyin, this is perfect because Tsingtao beer, the brand name, is not spelled with pinyin. It's spelled with another way to write Chinese with English letters. So Tsingtao here, the Chinese city of Qingdao. So what's up with the spelling? Why isn't it Qingdao? Why is it Tsingtao?
Because like, okay, so there was two types of I guess ways of writing the Chinese language into like a phonetic word that you could speak. There was one called, I think, Gades was the first one. Gades something, and that was the way that was the way that that foreigners that would try to translate something in Chinese, they would use that pronunciation. So like an example, I believe, would be like ni hao would be like, for hello, ni hao would be like KNEEHOW, something like that, trying to make it into like something that you could read in
Like
English.
yeah,
And
English words,
actually,
literally.
yeah, and then like people started to adopt pinyin, which was actually was not made so that foreigners could speak Chinese. It wasn't made for foreigners at all, even though it's written in English letters, right? It was made for actual Chinese people to learn standard Mandarin as they were switching from a country where everyone was divided into speaking their own dialect to learn the standard Mandarin. And that was why pinyin was made, was to help Chinese people. But as long as you learn how to pronounce the way it's supposed to be pronounced and not read it as if it was English, it's incredibly intuitive and easy once you learn that. But yeah, to answer your question, I think this like the way they spell it, Tsingtao, is probably from that like the old pinyin style, which was like what was it?
This is the
Wade
Wade.
Wade
Yeah,
something.
Wade's Giles.
Wade
Yeah,
Gales. Yeah,
Wade's.
that's
Yeah,
it.
or I think that's pronounced
Yeah,
correctly. Wade's Giles or something. Wade. Oh,
Wade
let me write.
Gales or something. Yeah,
Wade's Giles. Oh, is it one L? So
yeah. There
yeah,
you go.
this is This
Hmm.
is the way, like, if you see Peking University, like
Peking,
P-E-K-I-N-G,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
or Hong Kong for that matter. The name Hong Kong is Wade Giles, I believe. So I think I'm not an expert on this, and I could be wrong, but I think Wade Giles kind of phonetically is making the sounds of like Cantonese words. I don't even think it's Mandarin because
Mm.
Peking. Where did that come from? Beijing.
Well, let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see the word. So the word for like Hong
Nan.
Kong would be like in China in Mandarin, Shangang, right? It's like the
Yeah.
fragrant port. But in Cantonese, it's Honggang.
Oh,
So it
Hong
actually,
Kong.
yeah, Honggang. Yeah,
It sounds so
it sounds
prissy.
like Hong Kong,
Hong
right?
Kong, the way you said it. It was very prissy, the way it sounded. It's like so much different
Dude,
from Mandarin.
when I speak Cantonese, I sound hilarious, and like my Hong Kong friends, like and my Guangdong friends, they're like, it's hilarious, but please stop because like I do it really funny. They can
You
understand me, but it's like it's funny.
you sound like a really hot Instagram girl that's from Hong Kong and is trying to sound like a baby at the same
Oh,
time. You might be sounding like
yeah,
her. There's something that has like that super like trying to be cute girl sound, and then like when a guy does it, it's like whoa, stop.
because they have nine tones in Cantonese, and
Yeah,
it kind of sounds like a song when you hear someone speaking. It sounds like they're singing. So
yeah.
I'm trying to learn Cantonese. My Cantonese is rather basic. Like I could order food and I could, have a very basic conversation, but it really is a beautiful language. And if you listen to like some Hong Kong movies and stuff and Hong Kong music, you'll just see it's such a beautiful language, so different than Mandarin.
Do you have a
But yeah,
favorite Hong Kong movie?
do I have a favorite Hong Kong movie? I don't have a favorite. I do have a favorite Hong Kong artist, which would be Beyond,
Oh
Beyond.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
my KTV go-to song for Cantonese songs. Not
okay,
Beyond Meat. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Beyond. Now these guys were a lot of fun. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I mean, I know a few songs
Uh,
from them, and I can't speak Cantonese or sing it, so I could never do their songs at KTV. But they had the Mandarin versions in KTV too, right?
yeah, the KTVs, they have the traditional characters because a lot of the KTVs get the stuff from Taiwan where it's all traditional.
Yeah,
I guess for licensing reasons, they just use that. So when you're at a KTV, it's like I'll have to take out my phone to like look at what the simplified Chinese is because like I could read, some traditional, but because what I've been studying is simplified, it's like it's much easier to just read the simplified Chinese. So like I whip out my phone and look at what the simplified Chinese is when I'm looking at like some KTV songs. And yeah, I sing this song all the time at KTVs. One of their songs.
yeah. I try to find a comparison, like for Western rock music or pop music. Like, what is beyond? Like, is it the what of America? I almost want to say
Uh,
something like the Eagles. It's like not too hard, not too heavy. It's very accessible
mm,
for a lot of people. It's kind of light in a way, but it's really
yeah,
iconic too. There's a lot of really iconic songs they have.
I would say the Eagles is a great comparison. Yeah, maybe slightly harder than the Eagles, and definitely better in my opinion. More emotional. One of the things I love about Chinese music, whether it's canto or mando, it's just the emotion in the music. It really could just bring tears to you, like to your eyes. It's very passionate. The words are just beautiful. It's poetry.
Yeah,
I think the Eagles is a great comparison, though. Yeah,
something in
maybe a
this
little
music,
harder.
like I feel like there's a guy's voice that's super passionate and this like really unique sound. Like I felt connected to it when I heard it, and I don't even understand it, but like I
Yeah,
felt like, oh, I can feel that. That's it's really good.
yeah, Chinese music is wonderful like that. When I was, I would say like when I was like at an intermediate level, and I was only able to understand maybe like a third of what's going on or a fourth of what's going on in a song, I would still feel really connected to that song, and it would really speak to me, even though I only understood like a quarter or a half of it. And it's it's powerful, Chinese music. I love it. Great way to study too, to get to like to that intermediate level is to listen to a lot of Chinese music. I have it on one of my apps. I have a block and flow app for time management. And one of the things I use to keep my time very fixed for studying is this app block and flow. And one of my sections I have is strictly for Chinese music. I don't use it anymore for that because I'm above that level where Chinese music is able to teach me much. Every now and then I'll learn a new word, but for the most part, it's too easy. But when I was learning like intermediate level, it was really, really helpful. And I would transcribe the words I would hear. I'd write down my notebook, I would translate it, and it's a great resource to get to that over that hump of beginner to intermediate Chinese music.
Yeah, I've seen that with my own eyes too, with people who came over to China not knowing any Chinese, and they take it upon themselves to learn. And music was one of those things that really helped them. Like I had a good friend. So when I moved to China was in 2008. I moved to Nanchang, and I'd already come to China for study abroad a few times, like in Chengdu, and I went to Beijing one year, and then I was in Hefei one year. But anyways, 2008, I have a friend, my next door neighbor. He spoke no Chinese, and he was really passionate about learning. And he got a tutor from like the nearby university, and then he got me a tutor. He hooked me up because I wanted to keep improving. And he would bring a notebook everywhere, and he would like get Chinese lyrics printed, and then he would get the pinyin written on it, and then he would go to KTV and sing Chinese songs, and that would help him like learn Chinese, and it would also help him like impress girls and stuff.
It's fantastic because when you're doing that, it's really great because you are connecting like a positive feeling to your studies. Music, it's like a dopamine rush, when you listen to a good song, you're vibing, your head's bopping, you're enjoying it. You got that dopamine rush coming from it, no matter what the song is. If you're enjoying it, you got that. And so if you can combine studying with, dopamine, and like I say, like I always say this, is that when I study, it's like a high for me. I really enjoy studying Chinese. It makes me feel really good. It's like a high. And when you connect music, you get that huge rush that it's like it's paying off. All that studying time is paying off with feelings and emotions, and it makes it more connected to you. And it's a great thing. So if your friend is doing that by with music, and even for impressing girls, like he's like, oh wow, the more I improve my Chinese, the more girls I get. Well, that's also great too. Anything that shows like you work hard and then you get some kind of you get something out of it,
And the writer of that article, the expat guy, she's gonna hate that. She's really gonna hate about that whole comment about and if you can find that you can get more girls who speak Chinese, good for you. I mean, she's gonna be livid. She's gonna write another article.
I mean, there's something to be said though about sexpats. I mean, I think that's there's a fine line between learning Chinese so that you can find, a great quality, wife, girlfriend or whatever, have more fun. There's a fine line between that and just going out, just going clubbing every single night, going from girl to girl to girl to girl to girl. I think there's a fine line. Like nothing wrong with having a girlfriend and impressing her with your language skills. It feels good. Someone compliments you or something. You get this great feeling, and it makes you want to study more.
It's normal.
What's that?
It's normal.
Yeah.
It's normal.
Yeah.
As they say.
So I think there's nothing wrong with that. It's only when like it's like anything. If you do it in excess, nothing is really good in excess, right? So if you're just hopping around,
if you got to be a prick about it, everybody can be a prick about something. You can be a prick about popsicles. You can be a prick about anything.
Anything. Yeah. It's exactly. It's like, as long as you're not like excessively, whoring yourself out there, going from person to person to person. Well, that's just my opinion. Everybody has their own standards and whatnot, but nothing wrong with learning a language to find, a mate.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
All right. So beyond Canto Band, Cantonese, you say you haven't mastered that, but I did read in your bio.
I haven't, no.
That in your bio on Amazon, and we don't need to read it on the air, but I'll go back to your book though, just so we have that pulled up. You can find a bio on Lawrence on Amazon, and it mentions you speak some other dialects. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Okay, so So for living in like Chengdu, a lot of people in Chengdu, they do not speak standard Mandarin. So actually, my Mandarin is more standard. And this is a very foreign concept if you've never been in China before. It's like, it sounds weird if you've never been here. My Mandarin is more standard than like the security guards in my complex. It's incredible. Like they've lived here for 40 something years. And yet when we speak, I speak more clearly. I speak with, I speak better Chinese in terms of clarity and whatnot. So Chinese, it's really strange. Anyways, I digress. So what they end up speaking though is still Chinese. It's just not Mandarin. So I speak better Mandarin than them. They speak better Chinese because they're speaking dialect. They're speaking Sichuan dialect, which is very interesting. Sounds really cute when girls speak it. When guys speak it, and so
that's your preference, obviously your preference there.
Yeah, Chinese girl. I mean, my preference is always Mandarin. I love the Mandarin language, but it doesn't have the same feel. Like, for example, like Cantonese, it has a real vibe to it. When you hear Cantonese, it's so expressive, so much emotion, and like a lot of like particles for, expressing, excitement, doubt, and like all these feelings. Mandarin is more, conservative in that regard. But when you hear people speaking like Sichuanhua, it's just like they just go crazy. There's so much passion there. They love the flavor of it. They enjoy it. So I could understand a lot of it. I could speak a little bit. I'm not fluent in the Sichuan dialect at all. I could speak enough to impress some people, and that's about it. But I can understand a lot of it from living in Chengdu, where it's spoken all the time, as opposed to like right now, I'm in Shandong. Everyone here, except for like, the IEs, like except for the old people, like the old women and whatnot, the old men, everyone here is speaking Mandarin, really standard Mandarin. Whereas in Chengdu or in Sichuan in general, just day to day, you buy stuff in the store or whatever, they're all speaking, Chengdu dialect or Sichuan dialect, which is even some Sichuan dialects are actually really, hard to understand because there's a difference between the different, sub dialects, right?
So you were saying there was like guys speaking Sichuanhua or Sichuan language and girls speaking it, and you're like, hey, I just like Chinese. Are you like Mando sexual or are you like Sichuanhua sexual?
I'm a Mando sexual, but I respect all dialects. I love it. I think dialects are fantastic. So I'm very supportive of it. As long as, if they're like a young person, they should be able to speak standard Mandarin. If they're like 60, 70 years old, okay, it's fine. Like you can't speak standard Mandarin, I can understand that. But I think as long as if you're a young kid, learn Mandarin. But also you should know your heritage and your local dialect. That's part of, who you are. So
yeah, they got to preserve that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like to look at China kind of like I look at Europe in ancient history terms, like Roman Empire. It's this big empire across a continent, essentially. Not the whole continent, but a lot of it. And they have a unified language, Latin. They have centralized power, in a sense. And, if you had that in 2021 and you called it Europa or something, that's like China. Maybe they speak a Latin-based language. If you look at French and Spanish and even Romanian, all the Romance languages, they have a lot in common, but they're different. And I think like a lot of the Chinese dialects have that sort of dynamic as well. What do you think about that?
Well, didn't they try doing that? Wasn't there a language? I can't think of it off the top of my head, but wasn't there a des something?
Esperanto? That one?
Desperanto, right?
Esperanto.
Yeah.
Esperanto.
Esperanto.
You were combining it
to...
with Despacito in Esperanto.
That's where my Spanish level kind of, teeters off. Yeah. But yeah, so I think they tried that and it didn't work at all. But so
well, they didn't have that
question...
centralized government, China mandated Mandarin, and you can't even use Mandarin you can't even use dialects on TV, right?
Yeah, I don't know if, I don't want to say you can't, but it's kind of like you're encouraged. I think you're definitely encouraged to speak Mandarin. Even in Hong Kong, When they have class, it's taught. I believe it's taught in Mandarin. If I'm wrong, I apologize. Um, I I've heard from my friends it was like that,
Well, I
where
bet
you
it's
have
like
to
that
speak
now.
Mandarin.
If it wasn't then, it
Yeah. Oh,
probably is
yeah,
now.
yeah, 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 definitely. So, and I know, like, in a lot of places, a lot of schools, the teachers are supposed to only speak to the children in Mandarin. Um, Yeah, at my work right now, my colleagues are not allowed to speak the local dialect here at work. They're supposed to only speak standard Mandarin. Um, it's good and it's bad. In one way, it's sad to see like certain dialects being repressed and taken away because they all have their beautiful culture behind them and their nuances. It's just it's sad to see a language being repressed. But on another hand, if it could increase literacy, make a country more united and together, then that's a benefit as well. And speaking Mandarin is huge if you want to get employment. I mean, if you can't speak standard Mandarin and you want to get like a high paying job, that's going to be pretty difficult as a Chinese.
Yeah, I think
So
that's one of the old talking points for China as a nation is we need a unified language, we need a unified border, and you ever see that movie Hero way back in the day, like almost like 20 years ago?
no,
You haven't seen Hero? Oh my god.
no,
Well, you gotta watch Hero. I mean, Hero's got Jet Li. Let me pull it up. Hold on. Let me just pull up some visuals of Hero
sure.
because the movie's visually stunning. It's a great visual experience. I would say definitely watch this movie if you have a really nice HD TV. Now at the end of the movie, there's like a really forced segment about how like the emperor. This is like Qin Shi Huang, like the first emperor of the Qin Dynasty. It was like the first real dynasty, or the first like centralized dynasty of
Oh, okay.
China. He was all like talking about how everything needs to be centralized and unified, and I guess that's kind of the point of today's China too, with a lot of these mandates with Mandarin, with the 9-dash line. But anyways, I think I'm going into dangerous territory, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
steer away. I'm gonna steer away from this territory. I'm gonna bail you out right now. Let's talk
Thank
about
you.
let's talk about fiery bathroom experiences after hot pot. Let's get into that because I'm sure you got something to say about that.
I would say the food quality is improving a lot. When I first got here, like, I mean, when you say in Chinese, like if you talk about having diarrhea, is like it's pretty normal. It's like saying I have a headache. It's not even like it's not even uncouth. It's just like normal.
Yeah, that's. I feel like
You know.
la duzi, the Chinese word for diarrhea. It's one of those
Yeah.
words that a lot of the amateur Chinese learners they learn that word. That's one of the ones they
You learn
learn
that.
pretty quick.
You learn that word real quickly. Yeah. I would say, the it's improving, but it's still, if you're gonna go to hot pot, chances are you'll have to check out the restroom nearby and learn how to squat, I guess. But the food's delicious. It's worth it.
So I've been to Chongqing, and a lot of the popular hot pot there involves those sticks. It's that stick hot pot. Do you know what I'm talking about? Is that pretty popular in Chengdu as well?
I know in Chongqing they have like a grated thing. It's like little like this. It's like grated
They got these
the
these
pot.
sticks.
Oh,
Yeah,
like the
like
chuan
this.
chuan chuan.
Yeah, like this.
Is that like chuan chuan or something?
Oh
Or
yeah, it's not even hot pot. I mean, I guess in Chinese it's not hot pot. It's just tuan tuan.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Is this pretty
I mean,
popular
we
in
have lots
Chengdu?
of. Yeah, I mean, we have chuan chuan. It's fantastic. I'm a big fan of it. That's pretty popular in Chengdu for sure. You could get it with like, you can get it wet, you can get it dry, with your sauces. But yeah, it goes into a big pot, but it's not considered hot pot. It's considered its own entity. It is
Okay,
slightly different,
kind of
but
like
totally
how
popular for sure.
like malatang is not hot pot, and I've talked about
Right, but it's similar, yeah, but it's not, yeah.
some of these things on the show before. These dishes, they're kind of similar. I'd say they're in the same category. They're in the boiling stuff in water category, which Japan's got its fair share. We got the shabu shabu and the sukiyaki, and which I'm guessing they took from China in the first place. I would just guess.
Not sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe. Not sure. But the food's incredible in Chengdu, and like I said before, and I'll say it again because the food, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like real Chinese food, and in particular, Sichuan food. It's just incredible, and
What's like
I'm
a
like fortunate to
what's a
have
good
had so much of it.
what's a good home style dish that you would recommend from Chengdu? What are you ordering if like you have a friend from out of town who's never been there before and you want to impress them?
I would say maybe Hui Guo Rou.
Wei
It's my favorite.
Guo Rou.
Yeah. So in English, it'd be like twice cooked pork. Yeah.
Yeah, twice
And
cooked
there's
pork. That's in that elementary school, the elementary Chinese language book, man. They're like, oh yes, we
yeah,
had twice cooked pork.
it's a good one. So I mean, it's actually the literal translation is return to pot meat. But yeah, twice cooked pork is what it would be written as.
So
It's
it's
amazing.
literally
That would be
cooked
my
twice. Do you know anything about why it's called that?
Yeah, because when you're making it, first you make the pork, you heat up the pork, you fry it, and then
Yeah.
you put it away, and then you add the other stuff. And there's many different kinds of hui guo rou. There's like
What?
there's like at least 10 different types, if not more. And then you add the other stuff to it, and then you throw the pork back in and you refry it again. So it returns to the pot for a second frying.
Dude, I'm getting hungry. And this one is calling my name. It's a really low res image, but the meat quality
Swantai. Maybe,
looks.
maybe that's like Swantai hui guo.
Oh, I love a
Maybe.
good swan tie. Now that's something you don't see in America ever. Even
No.
at the Asian
Yeah.
market, I have trouble finding this. Swan tie garlic stems is what these are, and they're
hmm
used in a lot of Chinese cooking. Here's a picture of them actually cooked. Can you explain what these are, or just describe them?
Uh, I mean, yeah, they're just parts of the garlic of garlic, I guess. I don't know. It's a green
They're a part
vegetable, as you
that
can see right there.
they're a part that never gets talked about in America. I feel like it's a cover up. Like I want to go to Reddit conspiracy right now and make a post about it. About they're trying to suppress the garlic stem in America. To
There's
make us
there's a lot
like.
of vegetables and you can't find in America, and if you can, the quality is nothing like what you find in China. Like that's what I love about it. Uh, the wet markets and everything. You see on the news, oh, wet market, blah 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 blah. Bats and whatnot. I mean, no, I mean there are concerns for sanitation for sure, but there is nothing like that in America where you can just go downstairs, walk, 20 feet, and you can get the most fresh produce you'll ever have in your life. I never liked vegetables. I was never a vegetable guy. You know, I came to China and I was like, oh my God, I love vegetables. I love broccoli now. I love all these vegetables. This because they're so fresh. And then the seasons they use, it's nothing like in America. And America we have like frozen vegetables and stuff like that. Yeah, we have vegetable markets for sure, but they're incredibly expensive. You can't just go downstairs and get it, right? And the
I think
vegetables in China, man, oh, delicious,
Yeah, I think in
so fresh.
America
All the food.
it used to be a lot different. I think in the 1950s, things became so commercialized in terms of like food that was that was centralized and frozen and then delivered to cities across America, and then it kind of changes the way people consume food, and it wasn't always this way in America where like people are so disconnected from that. I mean, it's obviously coming back. There's a lot of farmers markets that's pretty trendy in a lot of places, but you don't necessarily get the breadth of ingredients that you might get in China. Like there's so many different types of vegetables that it's just so diverse, everything they have over there.
And and the meat. How about the meat? The meat that you get at these markets, it was killed and butchered that same day. You're
Yeah.
getting everything so fresh. They have the animal's carcass right there to show you that how fresh it is. Um, I've never had meat this fresh at all in America. Even at like really high quality restaurants, really expensive restaurants, they have high quality meat, but it wasn't butchered that day. Um, so
Yeah,
it's
I've seen a
incredible.
lot of guys like riding around on scooters in China with freshly butchered livestock, you could say, like a dead sheep or something, a half of a pig, sliced in half, and he's driving it across town to bring it to some market or something. Now I totally feel what you're saying about the vegetables.
I'll never forget that. My first time, sorry, I'll never forget that. My first time at like a Chinese supermarket, just looking in, seeing the chicken sprawled out like this, and looking at it, being like, "Oh my God!" You go to a Chinese supermarket, it's pretty hardcore compared to what you're used to seeing in America.
Dude, I actually have a very vivid memory. I lived in Taiwan when I was little. My dad used to work there. This is in the mid-'90s.
Oh, cool.
In 96 or 97, I went on a field trip to a wet market in Taiwan. And it was in the morning, I believe. And I was so shocked at what I saw. And I was like maybe 10, 11 years old. And there was, we go in there, and the thing is, the teachers really built it up. They're like, you're going to see things that you might find shocking. Like, they really built up the feeling, they got us scared. So we're already in the headspace, and we're children too. We don't know any better. So we're getting even more freaked out. So we go to this place, and like the first thing I see is like somebody grabbing a chicken by the neck, pulling out a pocket knife, like with their teeth, and then slitting its throat. Not chopping its head off, just slitting the throat of the chicken. And then I look over and there's like chicken guts on the ground. And then there's like intestines on this other stall. And I'm like, it's like a horror scene where I'm like, the camera's panning around at like a different thing and now though, if I see that, I'm like, well, yeah, whatever. It's normal.
Right.
Because I lived in China for 12 years and I'm so desensitized. So it's like nothing now. I've seen so many dead humans after living in China that I'm so desensitized after that.
Yeah, it's incredible. The things that were really, shocking, like when you first get here, and compared to, how they are, a few years later, it's incredible. You get really desensitized to it, and that in and of itself is pretty interesting. Yeah.
I had something to say about wet markets. I had another thing to say about it. The wet markets, the vegetables,
the meat.
I totally forgot. Oh yeah, the meat. Yeah. So I don't think the meat in Chinese. Okay, there's actually a lot of great meat in Chinese cooking. Like huiguo is really good, but it's not like a meat dish. It's like a meat and vegetable dish. Because in the West, if you have a meat dish, it's like really all about the meat. It's like prime rib, or it's a really juicy steak, or it's like fried chicken or smoked chicken or ham. It's like a ton of meat, and that's the main event. That's kind of like the culture of eating in the West, I'd say.
Maybe something like lamb, like Xinjiang lamb.
Yeah. I mean, so we'll get to that. But I think in like kind of home style standard Chinese cooking, and it's not even like one province. Like this is kind of like the run of the mill home style Chinese food. It's like usually a collage. It's like a bit of meat, but a bit of vegetables and a bit of spice and like some garlic and some ginger root. And it's this great symphony of things together. And it's really delicious. And it makes you appreciate vegetables a hell of a lot more, because you've never had broccoli that good. You've never had green beans that good. You've never had weird vegetables you've never heard of. And they're fucking good.
And then the spices together.
Yeah.
The freshness and the spices.
Yeah, it's so good. And and often when you have that meat, it's the fat of the meat that helps make the vegetables taste better too, I think, in a lot of cases. So if you're a vegetarian, you got to compromise. I'm sorry, but you're not getting the full experience. You got to get that pork fat, man. You got to get that.
Totally. Even the chickens are so different. The chickens, the color of the chickens, compared to like American chickens, like the size of the chickens compared to the American chickens. It's the black. I'm not even talking about the black chicken. I'm talking about like just even the normal chickens. The black chicken is delicious too, but I think in America a lot of the chickens are diseased. I remember reading something about them, about there's like a lot of diseased chickens in America. Maybe flu. Something with like cancer or something like that.
It sounds about right. They live in hell. These chickens.
Yeah.
These factory farms. Yeah. Something's bad.
But in China, it tastes so juicy and succulent and not dry at all. I remember I was in a village one time visiting my father-in-law's brother or something, and then they had a chicken, and they just took the chicken by the neck, slit its throat, and then it stopped making noise, and then blood spurted out everywhere. And I had no idea what was going on. I just went outside to make a phone call, and I see this going on, and I'm like, that's, but it's how it's done. And the chicken was very, very delicious.
Yeah, I would agree with you when it comes to like school cafeteria kitchen. There's a lot of bad chicken in America. I will not doubt. And maybe a lot of just run-of-the-mill restaurants like Applebee's or something, they probably give you a lot of really bad chicken. Now, I live in Texas, barbecue country. They do chicken really well here. So I tell you what, man, meat in America is so much better than in China. Overall, I'd say. But vegetables in China dominate. I think
That's
there's
fair.
if you're like a connoisseur of one or the other, I'm a person who likes both. If I like
Maybe
vegetables,
in Texas, maybe Texas meat is better, but I wouldn't say like the stuff you're getting on the coast is going to be better. The meat in China is way better than the stuff that I'm getting, like in like New York, New Jersey area.
Fair
Maybe
enough.
in Texas it's different though.
In like Delaware, I bet Delaware. I bet you can find some good chicken there because it's kind of rural, but like I bet there's a lot of like shitty suburban sprawl chicken, and then just all up into New Jersey and even into like New Hampshire.
Frozen.
There's probably
it's frozen
like
at the supermarket.
just a wasteland of disgusting chicken that exists in that region of America. Just the whole I-95.
No frozen
all
food
of
here.
I-95 is just shitty chicken. I bet.
Yeah, probably.
Sorry, I'm getting drunk now, as you can probably tell. Now, dude, I think we're totally on the same page with the food in China. Is there a dish that, like, huego roe is the dish that you'd recommend? Is there a dish that's a little more, I don't know, advanced that you recommend? Like, what's the more advanced level Chinese dish that you're going to introduce? Somebody who's more of a risk taker. Somebody who's a little more adventurous.
Risk taker. So maybe like rabbit.
Rabbit.
Yeah.
Brain? Rabbit brain?
No, not rabbit brain. Although you could say like pig brain. Pig brain maybe.
Pig brain. Because I searched rabbit brain China because that's like a real thing. That's like a pretty popular dish, I'd say. It's like go to a place, eat a fucking rabbit's head and suck its brain out. That's normal.
Yeah, I've had rabbit,
oh, here we go.
Pig brain.
Now that's the quintessential spicy pig brain. And that right there, if you are new to this kind of food, that probably looks horrifying. I tell you what, that is delicious right there. That bowl, that is deliciousness.
I couldn't eat it every day, but it's an exotic taste. It's kind of like caviar. It's delicious, but you're not going to want to eat it every single day. And it's weird. It's fish eggs. You're eating fish eggs. Even normal eggs, you're still eating eggs, right? So it's kind of like, what's in a hot dog? When you eat hot dogs in America, they're just, the pigs, the rear end of the pig and all these.
It's a lot
parts.
more than the brain, and it's a lot more disturbing if you really think
about it,
right? Yeah.
So I would say pig brain, and like rabbit. I think rabbit. I love rabbits, so I'm like, it's like I guess it's like a 矛盾. 怎么说? 矛盾. Like I forget the word in English.
Conflict.
Oh, what? Conflict. Yeah. There's like a conflict going on in my head about eating rabbit because it's like in Chengdu they have some delicious, rabbit dishes. But they're cute.
I can just see some like hardcore New Jersey, New York guy being like, I'm not eating this goddamn pig brain. Stop trying to make me eat this disgusting food. I'm gonna go down the street and get me a dog. I'm gonna get me a dog.
Yeah, if they eat the hot dog, they're already eating brains that fell on the floor, that was swept up with some dirty broom, and then there's like intestines thrown in there, and sausage is intestines, right? You got a lot of weird stuff in hot dogs, so I wouldn't be so quick to be like,
hey, it's presentable, all right? They package it in a package that I recognize like a goddamn sausage. I don't care if it's a pig's ass. It looks like a sausage. I'll eat it. But no, maybe that's the mentality. Because a lot of people are like, I don't want to eat the fish when I can see its head. I don't want to eat the bird when I can see its head. When it looks like an animal, they don't want to eat it. I find like a lot of people have that tendency.
Yeah, it's just it's a weird disconnect because on one hand, like I bet most people who eat meat, which is the majority of America would not want to go out and kill the animal and butcher it and clean the blood off and do all these things. But they have no qualms about eating, the same animals that they wouldn't kill themselves. It's a weird situation. And I think maybe in 100 years or less, like you said, but showed before, beyond meat, or for the, beyond the artist, I think things will turn to plant-based and, vegan, vegetarian in American within the next 100 years, because there's a real disconnect going on in that regard. That's a whole other topic, though.
And that's something I really like about China is like there's less of a barrier between the farmer and the consumer,
Yes.
And you can find that in America if you want to. There's plenty of farmers markets, but it's not so common like in China. Like it's like a 7-Eleven in China. It's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And
actually, an interesting point about the Chinese language, they call the same way they call like food, rou, right? For meat, the meat is like the rou, right? They also refer to their own body parts as rou, ji rou, muscles, right? Like they say like, oh, that's my meat, to refer to their own body. So it's just interesting to have something be like, oh, your meat is very, strong, or something like that,
Yeah, there's a lot of funny like direct translations that happen, but that's an interest. I mean, there's so many little details like that people don't consider in terms of people's psychology, in terms of the words they choose to speak.
And language will change how you think about something, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's so interesting.
It's huge. It's so huge. Language and culture really do go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. And really important to learn the culture, and not just, I think, to tie it back to language, because we went on a big tangent with food, is when you're learning Chinese or any language for that matter, you want to understand not just how to translate something, like be like, hey, Lawrence, how do I say this in Chinese? Okay, you could do that at first, and that's fine. I'll give you an example. It's like, a real simple example is like, how do you say how are you in Chinese? Well, 你好吗? But if you say that in Chinese to a Chinese person, you're like, 你好吗? They're gonna look at you like, I'm like, I'm okay. Like, yeah, I'm okay. Like, what's wrong with this guy? Because in Chinese, you would not say this as a greeting to say how, to like show like you want to greet them and show concern. So you might ask him, did you eat yet? Something like that. So when you're learning a language, I think this is really crucial, is to not just learn, okay, at first you can just learn how to directly translate things, but then once you get better, you need to quickly learn, okay, how would a Chinese person express this type of, statement? How would they, say this in a native way, which sometimes is the same as English, but a lot of times is not.
Yeah, you learn the nuance, and there's like a cultural nuance, there's a lingual nuance. There's a lot of nuance when you're learning something, and like, how do I act like a Chinese person, and how do I practice acting like a Chinese person, and how do I just naturally behave like a Chinese person eventually, when I want to.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. So actually, you're not trying to be trans Chinese. You're not trying to be trans Chinese. But you're trying to interact with them on a natural level where they're gonna be like, okay, I can level with this person, because at the same time, you want this Chinese person to reciprocate. You want to level with somebody, and if you can speak their language more, beyond the dictionary translation level, you can really go places.
It could speak to their heart. You speak in a man in their mother tongue, and you're speaking to their heart. And it really is so true. Gosh, talking about like changing your identity. When I speak Chinese, I change into a different person. Like my Chinese name, Li Xiatian, that's my Chinese name, right? When I speak as Li Xiatian, I speak in a different way. I have a different personality than when I just speak as Lawrence Feldman. It's kind of like having a split personality, of multiple personality disorder or something, but in a really, really good way. You kind of need to do that. And I found that a lot of my Chinese friends who have amazing English, the few that are in this category, they change their personality in a huge way when they switch languages. And it's just so funny to observe, but I do the same exact thing. It's really incredible. You have to change your personality if you really want to go full into a language. Change your mannerisms. In Chinese, you can't be moving your hands around like this because no
Because I'm
Chinese
Italian
speakers
and
do
I'm
that.
Chinese.
If you're
Hello, my
speaking Italian,
ass.
then you should, right? So it goes with your body gestures, how you carry yourself, and everything. So you have to be like, okay, am I the Shatian or am I Laurence Feldman right now? And
No,
it leads to some really interesting situations. Yeah.
I feel kind of bad. I feel like I was just saying, "Oh, when you speak Cantonese, you sound like a hot Instagram Hong Kong girl who's trying to sound like a baby but trying to sound sexy at the same time." So I mean, obviously you don't sound like that, but I was making kind of a joke. But I think you should own that joke, and I think you should make a persona. Like you should be like Xiao Ping Ping or something. You should have like a little cute name for your Cantonese persona when you speak Cantonese. You know.
Yeah. When I speak Cantonese, I try to be more outgoing, more exaggerated. When I speak Mandarin, I try to speak more proper Mandarin, more modest, perhaps.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned about like people saying you're Chinese is really standard. You know, you mentioned that, and I think we can dig into that a little more because when Chinese people have told me that my Chinese is better than theirs, which I didn't agree with them. I mean, like, what are you talking about?
Right.
You obviously know
It's a compliment.
Yeah, it's a compliment, but it's also like you obviously know a lot more words than I do. Your vocabulary is a lot richer than me. You're more natural at speaking the language, but I did speak more standard. Like my pronunciation was more standard. It was more like Mandarin Chinese.
It depends who it is. If it's
Yaochuan.
if it's compared to like a Bao'an, then I'm sure it is. If it's compared to like a college educated,
it was a Bao'an.
Universities, yeah, then I'm sure it is. I'm sure your Mandarin is more standard. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so this is like a local neighborhood security guard or like a local neighborhood granny. A lot of the older generation in China, their pronunciation is more local. It's not the standard Mandarin, which is like the standard template language, which is like if you made Europeans speak Latin to each other, that's the equivalent. If that were the standard
every
in
dialect
Europe,
is different. Well, every dialect's different, right? Some dialects are mutually unintelligible, and others you can understand. It depends on what the dialect is. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Some dialects, like if you take, for example, like Shanghai Hua, it's like no one's gonna understand that in Sichuan, like unless they've lived in Shanghai.
Weird.
But
Shanghainese is so different from Mandarin. Yeah.
so different. And then, but if you're speaking like I don't know, like Hunan Hua or something, you could understand that perfectly fine if you're a Sichuan, Mandarin speaker.
Yeah,
It just
so
depends.
that's like Portugal and Spain next to each other, as opposed to like Germany and France or something with like Shanghainese.
And then you have Cantonese, and it's just totally, I understand much more Cantonese than my wife can understand, and my Cantonese is still very, very basic. She can't understand at all what's going on because it's a totally different language. So
yeah,
it depends
so
what the language or
cool.
dialect is. Yeah.
China is just, I mean, we both lived there for so many years, so we're in it, but it's like such a interesting place. And I've left, it's like, that's like a former part of my life, but I'm still trying to stay connected. I'm actually doing a little bit of work that's still connected to China a bit, so I'm able to kind of keep it going, and I don't want to lose it. And talking to that Chinese guy today, and looking at my son and being like, crap, my son is not taking Chinese class. He needs to learn Chinese. Hey, I'm talking to Lawrence tonight. You're a master of learning Chinese. Do you have any recommendations for children?
Any language, but I think for children it's fantastic because they, the younger you are, the easier it is to acquire a language, a second language or whatnot. It's much easier as a child. So if your child immerses himself, it's a boy, right?
Yeah,
and,
but the thing is,
if he immerses himself,
a lot of the points you brought up before, like find something you're passionate about. Thing is, he does school. He does remote school too. So he's on the iPad doing school, Zoom calls. So when he's done learning, he's done learning. He wants to play Minecraft. He wants to play at the park. How am I going to get him interested in Chinese if it's going to be an extracurricular activity?
by associating something having him associate Chinese with something good. So like one of the things that I was doing was when I was writing my book, I would give myself a piece of Lindt chocolate, like this really delicious dark chocolate from Lindt, whenever I like banged out a chapter. And so it was like my reward for doing that. You could kind of do something similar like that. Like say, okay, I understand you don't want to, sit down and do like formal learning when you're done with school. And maybe like you could have like a Chinese tutor where it's just like a small period of time to teach him like formally. But then you could say, okay, now you could play Minecraft right now, but you have to play it in Chinese. Or you can go, I don't know, watch this TV show, but you have to watch it in Chinese, your favorite cartoon or something like that. There's plenty of things that you can do where they can associate, oh, I love playing games. Well, I have to play it in Chinese, but at least I get to play the game and have fun. And then you start picking stuff up. You still have to incorporate some formal, teaching and tutoring for the language, but it doesn't have to be like, hours and hours and hours of Chinese every day, formally. Yeah. It could just maybe be like, like a few hours a week, but then also when you have fun, make that fun incorporated into Chinese fun.
And that's brilliant. I mean, and that essentially mirrors what you said before. Find something you're interested in, connect that to Chinese, and that's great. So my son, he likes Minecraft. I'll try to figure out a Chinese way to do Minecraft. The thing about Minecraft, it's kind of like super language. It's like beyond language. It doesn't require language. It's like just feeling things, doing things, building things.
He can play multiplayer, right?
Yeah, he can, but like he's
have him play with the Chinese people.
He's 6. He's learning to read English. So like I gotta do one step at a time. But I have an idea. He loves dumplings. He still loves his Chinese food when it comes to that simple goodness, like a dumpling or a baozi, like a steamed bun. So he loves those things. So I'm thinking, after talking to you, I'm gonna only let him eat dumplings if he learns Chinese. So if he does like his little Chinese thing, he earns his dumplings. There you go. And I'm going to eat dumplings in front of him if he doesn't comply. And I'm going to be like, oh, this is delicious. I mean, if you want some of this dumpling action, you're going to have to do your half hour of Chinese, my man.
Yeah, and then when he's eating the dumplings, just talk with him in Chinese. I mean, when I have kids, I'm going to have a situation where my wife only speaks, Chinese to the child, and I only speak English. Now, your situation is different because, your wife is not Chinese. But you can speak Chinese, right? So you can say when it's dumplings time, you have to speak to me in Chinese, or you're not getting it. And if you even want to sit down at the dumplings table, you have to take that half an hour class or whatever, something like that.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
I'm doing this, and dude, you should write a book on it. This is you get kids hooked on dumplings. This is the plan. You start them at 2 years old. You get them hooked on dumplings. You get them addicted to these things, and then
I just had dumplings for lunch. Actually, it was pretty good.
5 years old, you cut them off. And they're like, Dad, Mom, Dad, where are the dumplings? And be like, oh, son, daughter, I'm afraid you're going to have to learn Chinese now if you want more dumplings. This could be a lifestyle.
Dumpling diplomacy.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, man. This is good.
And I'm sure you can find Chinese-speaking friends or whatever. Just get them into that culture and not just make it like, boring, tedious work, something where there has to be an aspect of boring, tedious work for anything if you want to get good at it. It can't all be all fun and games, but you should be able to do both. You can have both. And you should have both. You should have passive and active learning, just some Chinese in the background, maybe when he's doing something, just hearing it, getting that input is really, really crucial. And
yeah. And, with me, I'm a special case. My Chinese is pretty good, so I could coach my son. I could be there to troubleshoot, But the average American or the average non-Chinese speaker obviously doesn't speak Chinese.
Difficult.
If they want their kid to speak Chinese, maybe they put them in some kind of program or a class. Now, I met a guy in my neighborhood at the park. His daughter goes to the park and was playing with my son. And I heard her speaking Chinese, and this is a little white girl, and this is a white guy. He's even like in a blue collar industry too, and he just wanted his daughter to speak Chinese. And we started talking like maybe we'll start like a pod, maybe we'll get like an instructor, and we'll have a few kids, including our kids, to learn Chinese. And I think that's a good way for if you don't speak Chinese, or in any foreign language that matter, and you want your kid to speak it, and you're worried about COVID or whatever, find somebody to teach the language to like your child, but have a few other children there. Because for me, one thing that really made me excel was not wanting to be the slowest person in the class. Because I took Chinese mostly in college. I was embarrassed if I was the slowest person in the class. So, if you have competition there with the language, I think that can only help. What do you think about that? The competition aspect, at least.
Totally. I've only had a Chinese class with a group, like a group class. I've only had that for like maybe like a few months. So like maybe, I don't know, just like 3 months total or something, like 4 months total, like that. And I always wanted to be like that xuepa, I just wanted to be that rock star, the one that's always was like at the top of the class, and having that rivalry, the competitive nature, that's just making you want to strive and be the best. So totally, I think that's great, especially for children, because and when you're an adult, it's like, it's best to probably take, especially when you're going higher and higher in the levels, to take one-on-one classes. When you're first starting out, you don't need those. You can do group classes. It's no problem. But for children, I think, especially children starting out, you're going to want to have those group interactions where they associate learning Chinese with, hey, I get to see my friend Jack and Jill at the class, and I really like them. And we have a good time with Mrs. Wang. She's really interesting. And they put together those feelings of having a good time and enjoying themselves and associate that with learning Chinese. So it's very important to have a great teacher, and and if you could have classmates where you have like this little rivalry going, I mean, if you keep it fun and then I think it's a good thing. You're competing against yourself.
I also had teacher Wang Lao Sư. I had a Wang Lao Sư for sure. When I went to Hampshire College. Do you know? Are you aware of this school? So it's a very, very, very liberal arts college in the Northeast in Amherst, Massachusetts. Doesn't have grades. No GPA.
Oh.
No grades. Just written assessments. But they had a connection with Anhui Nongye Daxue, which is the Anhui Agricultural University. And my teacher came over from that school, from Anhui, Wang Lao Sư, and she was so legit. And 8 a.m., 5 days a week, we had Chinese class, and she was so traditional, so standard Mandarin, and so just like no bullshit. Like, I was able to learn Chinese just because this teacher. Like, I had some great teachers in college, and I felt bad when I met people who came to China and they learned Chinese so fast without what I had. Like you, for example, and like my friend Nick, my buddy who writes the KTV words. Like, he learned Chinese so fast, and he didn't have like the structure that I had, I feel like I was so lucky that I was able to do this at college. I was able to spend my time focusing on Chinese in college, and not I'm not paying for it right now. I'm not in debt from college, so I'd say I'm privileged.
I wish I studied Chinese in college. I really wish I did. It would have made it much easier. But I also think that self-studying is like really, it's like its own personal challenge. It's like climbing Mount Everest by yourself without a shepherd. It's a really great challenge to do, to study by yourself, or mostly by yourself. And you put in the work, you get results. If you're a halfway intelligent person, you work really hard at something, you're going to get results. Whether you have a teacher or not, just how bad do you want it? Do you want it like, it'd be cool if I could go to a restaurant and be like, oh, I just want to learn Chinese so I could order dumplings at the restaurant. Well, you're not going to, you're not going to do well. You're not going to get to a high level.
I have mastered the menu. The menu is like, that's ancient history for me. The menu is it's like intuitive at this point. But I do need to keep my Chinese up. And I spoke with a guy today, and I realized my Chinese hasn't gone away, thank God. Sometimes when I'm driving my car by myself, I'll have imaginary Chinese conversations just to keep it going.
It's great. talk
keep
to
those.
yourself in Chinese.
Yeah, like it's like pathways in the
Think in
brain.
Chinese.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
pathways in
should
the
do
brain.
that.
You got to
That's
keep them firing. You got to keep them firing.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, like I like to do that too. It's like if I sometimes I'll be like, you know what, I'm going to start thinking in Chinese about this situation. Not only does it help me with language, but it actually helps me make more logical and more rational decisions. And there's science behind that. I've read research that if you think about something in your second language, you will make a less impulsive decision, more rational decision. And you should think in the second language. It's a wonderful thing.
Now
And
that
totally.
is a great insight right there, because let's say you have a big decision to make in your life. Think about it, recap it in your head, then recap it in a foreign language, and then think about it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Think about all the inner talk that you do. You know, like you just think to yourself, like, oh, I'm hungry, or like, my stomach hurts, or I want to take a nap or something like that, or you're just thinking about really simple things. Why not, even if your level is really low, you could still do these things in Chinese. And then as your level gets higher and higher, you could have more advanced thoughts like, oh, I kind of don't want to go to work right now, but if I call sick, then the boss is going to say this. You could have like more higher level self-talk in a second language, and it will improve your language ability tremendously. So I'm a big believer in self.
Okay, this may seem kind of random. Have you ever had somebody kind of try to one-up you for not thinking in words? Like, I think in words a lot. I like talk in my head to work things out. Like, that's something I'll do, and I'm not ashamed of it. But I've had people be like, well, I don't do that. I just like, the thoughts just kind of process and the words come later, I just kind of like, it just kind of happens. And then when the words happen, it's when they're coming out of my mouth. You know what I'm talking about?
You mean like preparing what you're going to say versus impromptu?
Not even that. It's like some people have told me that they pride themselves in that they just have thoughts that don't have words, which I know what they're talking about. I have thoughts that don't have words, but they're saying like, I don't have internal monologue. And they're just like, they're just spitting out
I've never heard
thoughts,
of
I guess.
anyone saying they don't have an internal monologue. I think internal monologue is so crucial for everybody, even way beyond just language learning. It doesn't get talked about enough, and it's something that is really important, I think, just for being a person, is having good internal dialogue. I've never heard anyone who doesn't have it, but I don't hear this subject being brought up a lot. People kind of keep it to themselves, their internal dialogues.
Well, yeah, it's not really
interesting.
something you bring up in conversation. It's like, hey, man, what's been going on with your internal monologue? That's not like a conversation starter. That's normal.
There's a great YouTuber. There's a great YouTuber. Who was it? Not YouTuber. I'm sorry. He was a great author. He wrote the 5-Hour Work Week.
Okay.
Can't think of his name.
I like how you're like, not YouTuber, writer.
Writer. Yeah.
They've been replaced.
Anyway, so author of the 5-Hour Work Week, he always asks like, what kind of self-talk do you, in his interviews, he's like, what kind of self-talk do you do when you have like such and such situation happening? And it's a really good interview question to see how someone analyzes something in their head, the processes that they use to think about something.
Yeah.
So I think self-talk is huge. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, for language learning, it's crucial. Like, you need to be able to think in foreign words. And when I was learning Chinese really hardcore, so I told you I met my now wife in Chengdu. A year before that, I was in Hefei. A year after that, I was in Beijing at Beida. I like to tell people I went to Beida. I went to Peking University. It's like the Harvard of China. I mean, I did like a study abroad for 6 months there. It's not. I didn't go to Peking University, but I did a program there. But like, it always impresses people, especially in China. They're like, "Whoa,
sure,
Peking University, wow, good
for
you." But I used to dream. I used to have normal dreams, panicky dreams, nightmares in Chinese, because that program was so intense in Beijing that it was making my dreams be in Chinese. I don't have Chinese dreams anymore. I feel like I'm very natural when I speak Chinese. I can just do it if I need to. But I don't dream in Chinese. I haven't done that since I was a student.
Really? I dream in Chinese all the time. My wife will say, like, She'll say like, you were talking in your sleep, and I'll be like, what was I saying? And most of the time it's me speaking Chinese. I don't, when you're dreaming, you don't have like these really full, these like complex, sentences coming out of your mouth when you're sleep talking, of course. But yeah, I still dream in Chinese without even realizing it.
Well,
It's pretty
you
interesting.
are definitely a level or more, probably several levels above me when it comes to Chinese. I mean, you wrote a goddamn book about it, and you speak dialects.
It's not a.
And you're married to
It's not
a
a
Chinese
comparison.
person. No. I'm just saying. I'm just saying the facts.
Yeah.
These are the facts. These are the facts.
In Chinese culture, I have to keep neglecting any compliment. I can't accept it, and just have to keep throwing it back.
Well, you
and
know what we
saying
gotta do?
no, right?
You know what we gotta do when we end the show or the Zoom call. We gotta go like like when Chinese guys are ending a phone call and they're like saying their last words and the guy's responding like
Oh yeah, it would be like it would kind of be like 行好那我先挂好那好可以
Yeah.
好我先挂
So
好
let's-
可以好行好我挂好好好拜拜
That is flawless right there. So we have to do that before we end the show. And dude, it's almost 2 hours. We probably should end the show. Do you have anything beyond the book, do you have anything you want to say or plug or promote? Or is there anything you want to talk about?
I mean, I have like a channel on Douyin, which is the Chinese TikTok. It's called Langmon, LANGMONDE. You can only access that if you are in mainland China. So yeah, I would like to promote that. I use that for language learning. It's one word, LANGMONDE, one word. Forgot an E. Oh yeah, that's Chris. Nice. That's one of our. I didn't even know we're on Google. Cool. Yeah, I didn't know we were on Google. I'm surprised.
Yeah, I
it's
just
showing
did
up.
Google image search Lang.
That's it. Yeah, Langmon. So it's for Douyin. Oh, there we go. I didn't know it was on Google. Awesome. So it's for helping Chinese people learn English. I'm trying to help everyone learn language. Yeah, that's Dan. He's one of our superstars. He got really famous on Douyin. And really proud of him. Also, I wanted to say also
he's been on the show.
Yeah, I watched that. It was a great episode. A great giant has passed away, unfortunately. A great polyglot, Lao Shu. Are you familiar with him?
Lao Shu? I've heard the name.
Yeah. So, yeah, he was a polyglot that spoke, I don't know how many, like 20 something languages. He recently passed away. An American, African American guy, and yeah, he was just a giant on the YouTube for the polyglot community. I just wanted to pay my respects to him. He just died like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And
what killed him?
I think he had some heart issue or something.
Fuck, he's so young.
Yeah, he was able to speak so many different languages and just communicate it all while never coming to China. He's never been to China before, and he hasn't been to many countries, I don't think. And he was able in America to just speak to random people in their native tongues. And, just a wonderful guy. So I just wanted to pay my respects to him. Other than that, I would say check out the book, Mastering Mandarin. I actually put it up for Expats on Air. I put it up as a promotional price as 99 cents for the next 24 hours.
Wait, is that like a code?
Yeah, no, you don't need a code. It's just if you go to Amazon.com, type in Mastering Mandarin, and you get it within the next 24 hours, it'll show up as 99 cents. It should be starting any hour now. So yeah. So you can pick yourself up a copy for 99 cents, and it'll be the best 99 cents that you'll have ever spent. And
hell yeah. I hope about the show so far. I'm probably going to upload this like a day or two after we recorded. So if you're listening,
I could change the promotional price.
By the time you're listening, it's probably going to be updated. Because I got the website pulled up now. If you're watching the video version, that is. If you have the audio version, check out Mastering Mandarin on Amazon by Lawrence E. Feldman. Don't fuck around.
Yes,
if you want to learn Chinese, stop being a lazy bitch, relying on your Chinese girlfriend like a fucking schmuck. Learn Chinese like a fucking man. Come on. Or if you're a woman, learn Chinese like a fucking woman. Come on. What are you like? What are you gonna rely on your boyfriend for that? Like a little fucking wimp? Come on. Learn Chinese and learn the technique to learn Chinese, mastering Mandarin, because I tell you what, as a guy who learned Chinese, there are strategies involved with learning this language. This is not French. This is not Spanish. This doesn't have like little similarities in your languages. No. This is so foreign. You got to get in there and you got to learn the pinyin, you got to learn the Chinese characters, you got to learn the tones, you got to learn all this stuff simultaneously. And you're going to rock if you take it seriously. It's not that hard, because once you get beyond that barrier, once you get beyond that Chinese character barrier, once you get beyond that tone barrier, the grammar is so simple, it's not that hard.
Yep.
Lawrence, can you speak to that? Can you speak to Chinese grammar being simple?
Much more simpler than English grammar, that's for sure. Chinese grammar, really simple. Absolutely. And, my book, what it is it shows you, it's not going to teach you it's not going to make you fluent by reading it. You're not going to read this book and become fluent. No book can possibly do that. Nothing. Nothing you read can do that with one book. What this is going to do is it's going to say, hey, this is what you need to do. You need to look at this aspect, download these apps. This is how you should manage your time. These are the types of levels you should be learning. And it takes you as like a roadmap to show you how you should study. And not, you don't have to take everything from the book. You could take some things and leave out others, but it just shows you a roadmap for, hey, if you do these things and you treat studying Chinese like you treat water, like I need to have water, or I'm going to die. If you treat it with that kind of passion and you follow these steps, you will absolutely be fluent in a very short time. It's not going to take 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. And any kind of book that's saying, oh, fluent in 3 months or 6 months is, it's complete garbage.
Realistic. But Chinese is an investment, and it's worth it. Trust me.
It's a 99-cent investment, and I just hope it. Of the 99 cents, I think my cut will be like, I don't know, 20 cents from you buying the book of this. I don't care about that. I didn't write this book to make money. I wrote this book because I want to help people, and so if this book helps you in any way and turns you into somebody that's passionate about Chinese language and Chinese culture, then that's all. Those are all the dividends I need. Yeah. So I encourage you, check it out. And if you have any questions, feel free, reach out to me, check me out on my website. If you have any questions, you can email me and I'd be happy to help you on your journey, your language journey.
Yeah. And dude, I've been plugging the hell out of your book and I've not read it. And I'm definitely going to buy it. I'm definitely going to read it because this topic, I just think like the framing of your book is so important. There is a strategy with learning Chinese, and you really need to think about it because you're investing your time into this, and you can do it a lot more efficiently if you do it right. And I think your book is something that can offer that path. And this is like something
time is valuable. Time is valuable.
I'm gonna make my son read your book when he's a teenager, and even if the WeChat thing you mentioned there's a WeChat chapter that might be outdated by then. I don't care. I'm gonna make him learn it. And I'm gonna make him understand my life in China at the same time. But anyways, I'm digressing. Dude, if you are learning Chinese, if this is something that's important to you, get into the frame of mind of what you need to learn and when and how to do it right. And Lawrence has got your back on this. And you're not making much money from the promotion. And I will put all the stuff in the description. So if you're listening, if you're watching, check out the description. All the info's there.
Right on.
All right, Lawrence, I'm going to go to this screen right here, the thanks for watching screen. You don't have to hang up, but I'm going to stop recording. I just want to say to everybody, thanks for watching. This is me. This is me with my own voice in the headphones, and it's totally fucking up my thought process. 谢谢看我们的节目. I don't know if I said that right. Maybe.
谢谢大家.
谢谢大家. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.